My name is Jason Karsh. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of the Stellar Development Foundation, and we are really pleased to have this be the second Stellar House we've ever done. It's meant to be small, intimate conversations like this room, very manageable. We're going to hear a series of panels today talking about topics that are important to the industry. We're also going to make space for you to have conversations on the side and hopefully online for people to have conversations in the interwebs. And we hope to do this more and more. Next year, you'll hear more Stellar Houses throughout the year. And I think I'd first like to kick off our first panel here. We have Raja, who's the Chief Business Officer of the Stellar Development Foundation, and Ed, who's the CEO of RedSwan, to talk about tokenization and real estate. So without further ado, give them a round of applause. And let's get going.
All right, thank you guys so much. Ed, welcome to Miami. Benvenido a Miami. What you guys didn't realize is this is actually going to be a Will Smith karaoke session, and that's all we're doing today. Okay, all right, I'm gonna start with something hard-hitting. Okay, so Ed, if RedSwan was a person at a cocktail party, how would you introduce yourself?
A person at a cocktail party, I guess I'd say, hey, how are you? I'm RedSwan.
But you have to do the Spanish version of that too to make it really fit.
Hola, mi amor. Yo soy Eduardo, nor soy RedSwan.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, we're super excited to have you here and everyone here at Stellar House. You know, I think it would be really beneficial for everyone in the audience to just understand a little bit about what RedSwan is trying to do, and really, from your perspective, like, what was that aha moment for you when you said, hey, I'm on the right track. This is what we want to do with our platform.
A great question, and I get asked that question quite often. And I remember this very vividly because I was at Cushman Wakefield. It's 2018, probably February of 2018, when a colleague of mine that I was in business with in California, we had a startup company that was in automotive, totally different. He told me, I need to drop what I'm doing and go over to Dallas for a blockchain conference. And I just thought he was just crazy. You know, he's a tech guy, and he's really always kind of, thinking about outside the box. But I said, man, this is way outside the box. I don't know what blockchain is or Bitcoin, but I've heard of Bitcoin, but I'm not interested, right? And he says, no, you need to go. And he said, I know you very well. You're going to love it. Go down there and check this out. So I dropped what I was doing. I flew to Dallas, and right away I didn't, people said, hey, I'm in Bitcoin. They all raised their hand. They had a lot of people in Bitcoin. But I went right over to the exhibit hall where they were actually showing the use cases of blockchain. And I remember seeing a guy who was doing franchising of timeshares using blockchain. And I was like, interesting. And he was explaining it to me. And as he was explaining it to me, he was talking about how he's now using blockchain to fractionalize timeshares. I said, okay, I get that concept. But it hit me. And then I went to another place where these guys from Korea were doing a DAO with blockchain. So I learned a little bit about how the technology worked. And it just hit me that all of a sudden, this could really apply to capital markets, right? I mean, real estate is a really unfair business because I've serviced clients that are multi-billionaires, multi-millionaires, and help them make millions of dollars on a transactional basis, on a regular basis. And I never get to do business with my average common folk, right? Which is unfortunate because, when you see all the beautiful properties being built around you in New York and Chicago, they're not for you. I mean, you're going to be the tenant. You're going to be one paying the retail fees, but you're not going to be an owner of those properties at all. It's going to be Starwood or KKR or all these big companies. And I thought, even though I'm making great commission, it's just kind of unfair that the majority of the world is locked out of this. And so when I realized what blockchain can do, I said, this might be interesting. I met my co-founder at that same event because he realized I was doing real estate, and at that time they were doing ICOs in real estate, and they said, hey, we need you. And I still didn't know what they were really talking about, but we sat down and had a dinner, and I said, look, I will work with you guys. You teach me a little bit about the technology, then I will teach you a little bit about real estate and see what we can do. And that's kind of how it started. But then, like 3 weeks later, the SEC came out and they did a mandate where STOs were banned across the country. But they said, ICOs were banned across the country. But then they came back and said STOs are now legal, and security token offerings, meaning you can now use blockchain to create securities. And like, wow, my ears really perked. That was the aha moment, because I figured if the government is doing that now, they must know something that we don't. And so I stuck with that and started to learn more and more about blockchain, what it can do, and I just started transitioning from Cushman Wakefield to start RedSwan.
That's awesome. That's a really amazing story. I mean, it's fascinating because coming from Cushman Wakefield, you're probably around a lot of folks who think, real estate needs to be able to be touched, felt, kissed if it's going to be real, and that's kind of where you came from. But now you're seeing this disruption that is facilitated by tokenization, which is really, really exciting. And so, I guess, maybe from your perspective, what is like your vision of what impact this shift can actually have on the industry as a whole? And in particular, as you think about like larger corporations actually approaching this transformational opportunity coming from where you come from, like how is that going to happen?
I think conclusion is the word for where I see the benefit is, because even though it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry and led by most of the major corporations, and there's still a demand for ownership of real estate, whether it be for home ownership or some side of investment property that's giving you some kind of casual passive income. And I think that blockchain really helps that because, think about all these, next gen who can't even buy a house right now, right? Houses are out of range. If they started just to take $500 out of their payroll every month and buy into a portfolio of real estate, or just buy into different pieces of real estate around the country, around the world, in 4 or 5 years, they would actually have a much higher net worth and also significant cash flow. So I think that's really where the benefit is. And if you look at from the business side of it, the real estate industry needs capital flow. They need that liquidity. They need individuals to bring money in so they can do more with it. Right? That's how they all make their money. And by limiting themselves to just the the big users, the high net worth investors, or the family offices, they're limiting the amount of capital they can raise and how quick they can raise it. Blockchain opens the door for a massive amount of individuals to jump in, but also it opens the globe for investors. And I think that's very important for developers, for property owners, for people who are trying to buy and acquire real estate. They need more capital coming in. And I think this is a way for that to happen. Also, they need liquidity. Right now, in the real estate industry, it's frozen. We've seen the transactional volume drop 70% over last year, and that's because interest rates have jumped up so high in the past 3 years, almost 400 basis points. That means cap rates, which is how you price real estate, has also gone up. So for a person or a company who bought property 4 years ago, they typically are saying, I'm going to exit by year 4 or year 5, right? But if they bought at a cap rate that was at 4% when interest rates were at 3%, and now the cap rates are at 7% and 8% and 9%, there's no way they're selling, because they sell, they're making zero money. Matter of fact, they might even lose money. And that's what you're seeing in the market right now. People are, banks are holding more value on their loans than the real estate is actually worth based on the new paradigm of cap rates. So being able to sell some of their shares out, even at a lower price point, maybe 40% of their shares to rank and file retail investors and collect that liquidity, gives them a way to push the can down the road in terms of that asset, but then they use that liquidity to start buying more assets, and that starts the wheel turning again.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting on this like really phenomenal point, which is about accessibility and liquidity, right? And so, I know as an individual, my first access, I'm starting to age myself, so you guys can delete this from the internet. I heard that's a thing. But I didn't get access to my first, kind of exposure into real estate until I was like well into my 30s. And I'm, a good decade past that time now. And so it was really hard though, because it was very inaccessible at that time. But importantly, doing that first investment was a really big deal for me at that time, me and my family. And so understanding that there is liquidity and being able to actually like access that seems like a really, really fundamental point. So I think that's phenomenal. Look, I mean, I know that you guys are aiming to make kind of this high quality real estate accessible to investors of all types. That's really phenomenal. That's, I think, something that we all as builders can really get behind. You guys have had access to a couple different funds. There's that USA fund that you guys did. There's the Africa Housing Fund. Mm-hmm. And you started talking a little bit about this kind of international impact, which I'd love to touch on a little bit. But maybe you can share a little bit about some of these initiatives that you've worked on and what are the opportunities they enable?
Sure. We realized, because we've been at this for 8 years now, we realized that when we tokenized individual assets and we put them on our marketplace, individuals and retailer would come to us and say, Ed, which one of these should I buy? Which is a good deal? I mean, I don't know. Because let's face it, the experts on real estate are experts. They know what to buy. They know what they're looking at. They know the growth. They've put a lot of homework behind it. For the newbies coming to the marketplace, that's a little education gap for them. And so I think the best way for them to get a handle on it, rather than coming to ask for advice, which one should I buy, is start buying portfolios. Buy into a pool of assets so you're taking less risk than if you're just buying one solo asset. Because even the pros, they spend billions of dollars. They spread it around the country. They spread it around the asset classes, because you never know what's going to happen in the world that's going to cause one asset class or one geographic location to go down. But if you spread that risk amongst many assets, you pretty much have a balance of diversification that helps you for long-term investments and long-term success. So on our site, we started taking those individual assets and putting them into portfolios. And we're also building funds, because now people can have exposure to, for example, our hotel portfolio. 6 high-quality hotels. They're all boutique. They're in high-demand areas like the Hamptons of New York.
There's the Rivington Hotel.
The
which
Rivington Hotel in Manhattan.
Yeah.
There's Playa del Carmen, and right on the beach in Mexico. There's right on the beach in San Clemente. These are areas. These are properties you could never get a hold of. I mean, if you tried, because not only are they expensive, but the sellers aren't selling, right? Because they know they have gold. So if you can now buy into that portfolio of all these boutique hotels, and then have access to an NFT to actually visit those hotels, that's a smart play for an average investor that's new to the market, because you're not only getting income from the performance of the hotel, you're diversified into very strategic locations, but you also have the ability to have lifestyle, to actually visit the hotel, show your NFT, get 10% off the drinks and the food and beverage, get a free night stay per year. I mean, this is what I think people would want from an investment.
Yeah, I love this continued view on accessibility, being able to access investments of these types at fractionalized levels. It makes all the sense in the world, and I think it starts to create this really good flywheel, I think, for individuals who are looking to build out these portfolios where they get access to different versions of kind of risk and return in their portfolio a lot earlier, because now it's accessible. So it's really awesome. I mean, I would love to touch a little bit further on kind of the international.
I want to say just one thing, that how real estate I think is important, and why I'm so excited about it. Just like you, I got exposed to real estate at an early age, decades ago. But my first exposure was buying a duplex, right? Yeah. And I was in Oakland, California, and prices were a little bit lower then, but I was able to, finance the duplex because the owner gave me a carryback, where they carried back the note, so I brought them 15% down. But I was able to rent out the other side, and that actually covered the note, and I lived on the other side for free. And then I stayed there for 3 years, and that house went up in value about 35, 40% in 3 years. I rolled it into the next house, right? This way I was able to now afford a bigger house, but it just kept going from there. And after I left California and took proceeds from my home, I put those into real estate in the Texas market and different types of commercial real estate. And I tell you, it made every difference in the world in terms of net worth. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of houses, we are at Stellar House right now, and so I have to ask a really important question, certainly to me, but hopefully to the audience as well, which is, what drew RedSwan to build on Stellar? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your vision. Maybe we can also touch on the RedSwan Token Studio as well.
You, of course, Raja. No, I think all the...
Everybody says that.
No, seriously, I do have a big admiration for your leadership team, from Danielle all the way to yourself and everyone else that's involved. You guys really laser focus on RWA and finance, and so we see a huge synergy there, because commercial real estate is really about educating people, giving financial literacy, and this is exposure that people never really talk about and is never really passed on. So when you guys focus on that and RWA, I'm thinking this is the kind of organization I want to be involved in. Not to mention that you're leading the internet with transactional volume. at least fourth in play, I think came in number 4, payment volumes in terms of surpassing 5 billion. This is in line with the kind of backbone we need to raise, $100 billion of assets on chain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I want to touch a little on this question about international. I mean, I think one of the things that has been so inspiring for me as part of the foundation is how much of what we do and how much of the builders and I think folks on the network are from regions all over the world. And so, I'm really interested from your perspective. Are you seeing any regions that are kind of starting to emerge outside of the United States as leaders in tokenizing real estate? Which ones are exciting to you?
Good question. I've traveled a lot doing conferences, and I slowed that down a bit to go places where, like you said, really matter. And I look at the metrics of who are the biggest users of crypto right now or digital technology. And Asia is huge, right? Asia is not only using cryptocurrency, but they're also tokenizing real estate. And we were amazed by how far ahead they were. I thought RedSwan was a big deal, but they've done 35 billion in tokenization of volume in Japan. And now looking at U.S. as a target market they want to buy from because of the higher yields. But they mastered that art of buying a building, tokenizing 100% of it, and then selling those shares out to the public. And at one point, they were selling the shares to the public for no yield, just to be able to have access to a quality asset like a hotel that's going to go up in value because the interest rates in Japan were so low. People were rushing at that opportunity, right? So I learned a lot from that market. Also see a lot of activity that's growing in the GCC. They've made a lot of regulatory advances that have now brought on Vera licenses to sell digital assets. They've developed a lot of their own stable coins. They're accepting cryptocurrency, the government level accepting cryptocurrency for purchasing of land from the government. So they're further ahead than we are in the United States. And I think that's a market that we're involved in and we want to stay involved in. Where else am I seeing a lot of activity? I think those are two great markets right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I describe those as like affluent markets. I mean, certainly like in Japan. I think one of the things that we see is housing affordability is a real challenge in many parts of the world. And that includes the US as well. But from your perspective, do you see an avenue for tokenized real estate to help address issues like high development costs or access to capital or just creating more pathways to ownership at the individual level?
Yeah, I think cost of capital, if it could be brought down, will bring down the cost and bring down, make it much more affordable for people to buy. So accessing crowdfunded capital through tokenization could bring down the cost of capital, as well as they did like what we were doing with the hotels, create NFTs that provide some user experience. They can use those same NFTs to be vouchers or offset for financing of houses so that they build the house off of tokenized crowdfunding capital, but then they also put out NFTs so that people who are applying for mortgage have a discount on their rates. So these are ways they can make it more affordable. So again, bring down the cost of capital, brings down the cost of the actual construction. I also think that just by people buying into, like I said before, real estate bit by bit, dollar cost averaging. We started early, and you should all start early because real estate compounds. Real estate hedges against inflation. Real estate grows itself because the land, you can't manufacture land, right? So as long as the population will increase, that land will always keep going up in value unless something happens, it's a flood or typhoon. But in normal situations, real estate will always go up in value. And so if you have a bit of it. I don't care. My father bought land in Canada. It was like swampland. Today, it's Grand Alley is a big major development, and big real estate development years later. So I think bits and pieces of that will always give you net worth that you can convert into home ownership, because home ownership is not the end all. It's actually a big cost to your capital. I mean, to your your financial package. Your home is going to cost you probably 40% of your income. So why put all that money into a home that's not making you money right now, that you may not live in for a long period of time, and that may also may not go up in value? So I think spreading it out, and growing dollar cost average will help that.
This is not the forum for us to talk about the 50-year mortgage, but I'll probably have a conversation with you aside on that. I think what you're touching on some really fascinating things about a portfolio type of investing strategy, and I'm curious from your perspective, like, what needs to happen for the shift in this tokenized real estate being part of the average investor's portfolio? Like, what needs to happen for that to be the case?
Education, education, education. I just think people need to see better examples of it working, right? People buying into tokenized real estate and seeing how easy it is, seeing how they're actually making profit from it, and then comparing it to what they're doing right now. That's what I tell even family offices, is, hey, you've been buying limited partnerships in real estate forever, and you're stuck. You can't even get out of that real estate. Buy digital exposure to real estate, and now if you want to sell, at least you have the option to put it out to the market to sell. And once that clicks, they're going to say, you know what, I'm never going to buy this kind of real estate anymore. I'm always going to buy somewhere I have the option to get out.
Yeah. Is there any real estate that shouldn't be tokenized?
It should not be?
Yeah.
Real estate that does not earn any income, in my opinion, probably should not be tokenized. But then again, if it's an area that's going up in value, at least it still has a capital gain. So I just think, I don't know, I can't think of any real estate that should not be tokenized unless it just has no worth at all or is going to go down in value. Then I would not tokenize it. Also, I don't believe in tokenizing products that are going to be flipped in a short period of time. There's no sense in putting all this time into tokenizing, like a condominium building, right? And then in 18 months, they sell all the condos out and they have to give back the money to the token holders. Even though the return may be a little higher, it's that whole process can be, you could have done that without tokenization.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Outside your wheelhouse, but tokenizing Lamborghinis, in or out?
For me, is out, but
Okay. I mean, we are at Art Basel.
tokenize the garages that hold their Lamborghinis. How about that?
We're here at Art Basel in Miami, and I have seen quite a few luxury cars.
Heard them all night.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so like looking ahead, what milestones do you expect to shape kind of this next phase of the industry? Like, where do you see tokenized real estate heading over the course of these next 5 years?
I see it growing. I mean, just in the past 2 months, the phone calls that I'm getting has been very much, satisfying to me. One of the largest, I would say the largest real estate owner in the country called and said, look, we have a lot of real estate and we're not moving it. And we're thinking tokenization has come up in our board and it's kind of a priority for us right now to understand. Would you be interested in maybe doing a pilot to see how well it would work compared to us going into the traditional role of using a broker? Man, I mean, that's the kind of account I want, right? Then also, another guy that we approached back when I was in 2018 when we were just starting and raising capital, this is a sheikh out of Dubai. He turned us down because he thought we were too early, it's not going to happen. But now he calls. He says, hey, we got to meet. I'm here in the United States, want to talk to you. I see tokenization. He said, matter of fact, I bought Bitcoin when everybody thought it was crazy, and now I want to convert my Bitcoin to RWA. And he said, I want to use RedSwan as my foundation. I mean, so people are doing a 180-degree turn, 360-degree turn on tokenization, and I see that because they now start to get the benefits of it, and they now start to realize that just putting your money in crypto that has a lot of volatility is not good for the heart, and is not good for the pocketbook, right? But if you blend, and like I said, diversify, you get the best of all worlds.
Yeah, love it. Ed, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm going to hit you with 4 rapid-fire questions. You ready? Okay. Even if you're not, I'm going to do it anyway. All right. Token or deed?
Token.
Commercial or residential?
Commercial.
Blockchain evangelist or real estate rebel?
Real estate rebel.
Woo. Metaverse buildings, hype or the future?
Hype.
All right. Ed, thanks so much. This has been fantastic.